All right, guys. Howdy. How are ya? We are live, I do believe. This is telling me that we are there. So, welcome everybody. I know that we had about 25 people that were waiting, so I think my viewer count will jump pretty high pretty quick. So, do me a quick favor and let me know how things look and sound. Looks like from my side of things that we're doing okay. But let me know if you can hear me and what's going on. Okay? All right. So here we go, guys. Let me make myself a little bit smaller so we can read. Hello. How are you? Where are you from? What's your gardening zone? And how cold does it get where you live? Okay? We are going to be talking about fall gardening and maybe a little bit of winter gardening, but mostly fall today. And so I'm interested to know where you're from and in particular how cold it gets in your area. So let me know in the comments. So what do we got? We've got Georgia, we've got Kentucky, Zone 9B, Roman. Wow. We already have 50 viewers. That's awesome. Welcome, guys. Welcome. Who else? We'll kind of just hang out here for a minute while we wait for people to arrive. Alaska. Awesome. 4A. Wow, that's pretty warm for Alaska. Toronto, North Carolina. West Jordan, Utah. That's right up the street from me. Pike, Pennsylvania. Zone 5B. We've got Kansas. Toronto again. Denver. Washington, Canada. Wow, that Karen, Sanush, Washington. Wow, I probably totally blew that. Upstate New York, Missouri, Nebraska. Good. All right, you guys are all the kind of people that I want to be hearing and talking to. Sam is in Zone 7B. Iowa. New York, Zone 6, Illinois, California. Okay, awesome. Great. All right, guys, so here's the plan for today. Let me, first off, hang around. Let me turn this off for just a second. Turn myself off. Hang around. I'm not selling anything today, guys. I don't have a product that I'm selling or anything like that today. I do have a free course that I'm offering. And so hang around till the end, and we're going to do some question and answer then. And but if you would like, even for those of you that might have to leave a little bit early, if you'd like to join this free year-round gardening mini course, there's a link in the description that will take you out, and you can join that course for free. And like I say, I'm not really selling anything today. We do have my year-round gardening masterclass, which will be coming up in a couple of weeks. But I just wanted to do a live broadcast today and do a little bit of talking because now is the time that we need to be thinking about seedlings. So I got a free offer for you, but I'm not selling anything today. Okay. All right. So here's what we're going to be covering for the day. We are going to be talking about starting seedlings for our fall crops. Okay. So we're going to talk about timing. And in particular, when we should be planting. We're going to talk about the Brassica family crops. So that's everything that's in the, basically the cabbage family, broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower. We're going to talk about when we should be planting those. And then we're going to talk about other fall crops. And then we'll talk just briefly about extending your growing season using some hoop houses. Okay. Now, just so that you guys know, we've got a lot of webinars coming up. I'm going to be doing at least one of these a week for the next 2 or 3 weeks. The week of July 15th, I'm actually going to be doing 3. So we should have every Friday for the next little while, we'll have a workshop for you. And then that second week of July, we'll actually have 3 that we're going to be doing. That's when the year-round gardening master course will be open. So stay tuned for all of that, but we'll have a lot of good stuff for later on. Okay. And somebody's asking right away, is this going to be placed on our channel for viewing? Yes, I'll leave this up for a while, probably a couple of months. I'll leave this so it'll be here on the channel. Okay. Now, so today's class is kind of designed for those of you that live in zones 3 to 8. Those of you that are in the warmer zones, I saw a couple of zone 10s and some zone 9s. You'll still get some benefit from this, but as you can see, what we're going to be talking about today is for colder zones, okay? For those of you that live in the warmer zones, these calculations and stuff that we're going to be talking about will still be applicable to you, but you're not going to be starting your seedlings quite as soon because you won't be planting your fall crops until a little bit later than those of us that have kind of the colder temperatures, okay? We will be, you need to be able to start some seedlings indoors. So that's what we're going to be talking about today is seedlings that we should be starting indoors. I do, again, I've got a free offer at the end. If that offends you at all, then this isn't the right webinar for you, okay? All right, so who am I? Why should you be listening to me? My name is Rick Stone. I am the founder of the Gardening Academy, and I'm also the principal author on the website Our Stony Acres. I'm a master gardener, and I have been gardening for 23 plus years. I probably need to update that slide because it's more like 25 now. So we've been growing for a long, long time, and we have been growing fall and winter gardens for 12 seasons now. Our first winter garden was in 2009, and so we're 12 years into the adventure that is fall and winter gardening as well. So I've been doing this for a while, okay? All right, so here's kind of the format. Well, let's go back. Here's kind of the format. So I'm going to talk for about, I don't know, probably 20 minutes. I've got about 20 minutes of information for you. Then we'll talk about the Master Gardener, or I'm sorry, the Master Year-Round Gardening Master class and the free class that I have for you. And then I'm going to take some questions. So if you have questions, my assistant is actually watching this video, and she is writing down all of the questions, and they're going to come up over here on another computer for me. So if you have questions, go ahead and ask them as we're going along, and she will take care of kind of collecting those, and then I'll answer them all at the end. Because if I try to track, once I start teaching, if I'm trying to track the feed over here while I'm teaching, it gets really distracting. So we'll answer all the questions at the end, and I'll leave some time, however long. So I've got about maybe 20 minutes of teaching for you, and then we'll do the Q&A, okay? All right, so let's go. Okay, so is what I'm going to do, we're going to talk today about planting seedlings for fall gardens, okay? And why the heck am I talking about planting fall garden seedlings in June, right? That's weird. But really, for many of us, it's time to get those seedlings planted. And I'm going to give you a calculation that will help you. But if you live in zones 4, 5, 6, maybe even zone 7, depending on when your frost date is, now is the time for you to actually start a lot of the broccoli family crops indoors so that they're ready to go out in the fall, okay? So that you get the timing right. So that's why we're talking about this today and why we're covering that, okay? So let me give you my favorite example, okay? So we have a broccoli variety that we really like that is mature in about 75 days, okay? So if you look at the back of the seed package, and by the way, I got to tell you guys this before we really get started. This was pretty awesome. So the last time we were doing these live webinars was about a month ago, and there was a gal from France. Her name is Joyce, and she sent me seeds. It's totally cool. She sent me seeds. They're French. They're all in French. I can't read them. I don't know exactly what varieties, but it was a variety of tomato that she wanted to, and then some zucchini, which is called courgettes in France and even in Europe. That's what they call them. She sent me seeds. Anyways, I thought it was super cool. So Joyce, if you happen to be here, thank you. Very awesome. So thanks. But if we look at the back of the seed package, okay, and it wasn't in French, we would see that it would say how long from transplant or from seedling or from seed until we have a mature plant, okay? And the broccoli variety that we like to plant on the back of the package says 75 days, okay? Now, the problem with that is those dates are meant for spring, okay? Because that's traditionally when gardens are planted, and so they make those calculations for springtime. And when we're talking about fall, we actually have to add some additional time, okay? So I want you to add whatever the maturity date is for your crop. You need to add about about 15 days. And the reason why is because in the fall, we're getting less and less and less sunlight. The sunlight is going down, down, down. The temperatures are going down. It's the exact opposite of springtime when those calculations were made for how long until things mature. So, so we have to remember to add about 15 days. So my 75-day broccoli is maturing in more like 90 days in the fall, and sometimes even a little bit longer than that, depending on what our weather is like. And again, that's because we're declining sunlight. We're getting less sunlight, so there's less energy for the plant to grow, so it just takes longer, okay? So we have to remember to keep that in mind in all of our calculations when we're trying to figure out when and what to plant, okay? The other thing that is super important for us to do is to figure out when our first frost date is in the fall, okay? So in the feed, you guys start throwing out when your first frost dates are. For us here in Zone 6B, we are about October 1st. A lot of my neighbors that live only a few miles to the to the west of us, their date is a little bit later, but we live kind of down at the center of the valley, and it gets colder. The cold air sinks, and so we're about October 1st is our first frost date, okay? Now, if you don't know your first frost date, you need to figure it out, and there's 2 or 3 ways that you can do that. The first one would be ask somebody that's an expert in your area, okay? Figure out from them when that frost date is. That's usually the most reliable method, okay? And then if not, there are 3 websites that I have listed here. And I'm going to apologize right off the bat. I meant to put links to these websites down in the description, and I realized like 5 minutes before I started that I hadn't. So as soon as I finish, I'll put those links down in the description. But these are the websites. There's one called Morning Chores, there's another called Farmer's Almanac, and then garden.org. So if you just Google Morning Chores frost date, it'll take you to that page. And you can put in your zip code, and it will give you an estimated frost date. Now, here's the problem. I put my zip code in each one of those 3 websites, and it gave me dramatically different dates, okay? I found that the one that was the most accurate was Morning Chores, which is why I have it first on the list. So that would probably be where I would recommend that you go. But those, whatever they're using to calculate is kind of a little bit random. And so you're really better off to ask an expert around, call your local county extension agency if you don't know, and figure out when that frost date is, okay? All right, so the first crops that we're going to talk about are the Brassica family, okay? So that is everything that's related to cabbage, okay? So we're talking broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, kale, kohlrabi, collards, Brussels sprouts, and even the Asian greens, so things like bok choy and tatsoi, okay? All of those are the Brassica family, and all of those need to be started, with a few exceptions, need to be started from seedlings indoors and then transplanted out later, okay? Now, if you happen to live in California or somewhere like that, where you have big, nice, long falls that don't really end in a cold winter, then you may be able to get away with planting those directly by seed. You might, all the way down to about zone 8, be able to get away with that. For most of us, though, that live in the colder zones, you need to be putting transplants in because you just don't have time to make them grow if you're planting directly outside. Now, there are some exceptions there. One would be kale, the other would be collards, and then the Asian greens. All of those could be planted outside by seed because they're kind of more leafy greeny, and they don't take as long to mature. They also happen to be pretty hardy, frost hardy and things like that. So, but all of the others, broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, kohlrabi, Brussels sprouts, all of those need to be started indoors for those of us that have cold winters, okay? If you want to plant them for fall, you need to get them started indoors, okay? All right. Now let's talk about the calculation, okay? So this is how we figure out when we should be planting these seedlings. And for a lot of you, this calculation is going to be now or very soon, okay? So we take our first frost date and we subtract 6 weeks from that, okay? That is when you want to put your seedlings out into the garden, okay? So first frost date minus 6 weeks, put your seedlings out into the garden, your transplants out into the garden, okay? So that means that if we're going to start them indoors first, that we need to take that planting date and we need to subtract another 6 to 8 weeks from that, and that will equal the time that we want to be planting those indoors, okay? So let's use my garden as an example, okay? So October 1st is our first frost date in the fall, usually, okay? So if we take 6 weeks from that, that means that we need to be putting our transplants, our broccoli, our cabbage, our cauliflower, those need to be going out in the garden on August 15th, okay? Then if we take another 6 to 8 weeks away from that August 15th date, then that means that I need to be starting my broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, kale, kohlrabi, Brussels sprouts, all of those need to be started indoors somewhere between June 15th and July 1st, right now, okay? So those of you in zones 4, 5, and 6 may find that that calculation means that you need to get busy, that you need to actually get those happening fairly soon, which is why we're doing this workshop today, okay? All right, so there's the calculation, and we'll kind of move on from there, okay? Now, there are some other crops that we can plant in the fall as well, and this list is, doesn't include everything. There's tons of leafy greens. About every leafy green that there is can be planted in the fall. But other crops like lettuce, kale, Swiss chard, spinach, the Asian greens again, arugula, and endive, all of those crops can be planted from seed directly out in the garden, okay? And for those, we are going to do a different planting date, okay? So we're going to do the same calculation, our first frost date, and then we're going to take 6 to 8 weeks away from that, and you can then plant those directly out in the garden. But if you don't have space, because that, for me, that's like August 1st, right? Well, August 1st, I still have tomatoes and peppers, and my squash are sprawling all over the place. My potatoes are just starting to get ready to harvest. I'm just digging up my onions. And so I have a ton of stuff in my garden, and I really don't have a lot of space. And so for all of those crops that we listed, let's go back to the list, all of these crops, we can start them indoors 6 to 8 weeks before our first frost in the fall. So again, for us, that would be about August 1st, somewhere between August 1st and August 15th. So you can do those indoors as well, okay? Hopefully that all makes sense. Okay, all right, now I did want to talk a little bit about some hoop houses, okay? And later in the next 2 weeks, if you guys want to check back in and see what all the other workshops that I'm going to be doing, we're going to talk a lot more about season extension. And now is the time to be learning about that, because as you can see from those calculations, a lot of us are going to be needing to plant our seeds, our fall and winter garden seeds. We need to be planting those about the 1st of August. So we'll be tackling a lot of these topics here pretty quick. Let me show you a picture. This is a picture of one of our hoop houses. This picture was probably actually taken in December or January. But I wanted to just introduce you guys to the idea of using some structures for protecting your crops to extend your growing season even more. Okay, so we've got all of those crops that we planted, the broccoli, the cabbage, the lettuce, and all those kind of things. And we want to continue to be able to harvest from those, and we can use mini hoop houses to do that, especially for those of us that live in zones 5, 6, and 7. Those of you that are in 3 and 4, you may want to consider a cold frame instead of a mini hoop house, because they protect a little bit better. But zones 6 and 7 and 8, and maybe even as low as zone 5, you can definitely add an extra 6 weeks to your growing season by using just a mini hoop house. Okay, so really simple. They offer a lot more protection to your crops from both the cold weather and from the wind. They're just really simple, and you're just going to add, put some hoops on, and then you're just going to add some inexpensive painter's plastic. So something like a 5 mil painter's plastic is what you're going to use. So let me turn myself off here so that you guys can see the picture. This is how you build it. So I just use 1/2-inch PVC pipe, and I add a ridge pole, just some kind of wood, or you could use PVC pipe again if you wanted to. And you're going to attach that to the top. That offers and gives you some strength to the structure. And then you're just going to cover it with the plastic and secure it down to the bed. If you don't have raised beds, then you're going to use some rebar or something like that to put in the ground, and then you're going to put the hoops, the PVC pipe, on top of that rebar to stick them in the ground. So super easy to build. Even with, and the nice thing about this is there's hardly any lumber involved at all, and so even with today's lumber prices, you can still get away with building a hoop house like this for maybe $25 to $30. So really inexpensive way for you to do that. Okay, all right. That is really all I have for today. So it looks like we've got a ton of questions. So really quick, let me just cover again, I'm not selling you anything today because it's free, but we've got this year-round gardening mini course, which goes into a lot more depth, and this course is available. It's up and running right now. In fact, we've already had about 350 people enroll in it. About 45 minutes long, and we talk about the plants or the crops that you can grow for fall and winter gardening. We talk about the timing in a lot more depth, and then we talk a lot more about protection. So we talk about all 3 methods of protecting your crops, which is fabric row covers, mini hoop houses, and cold frames. I don't talk about greenhouses because I try to keep things inexpensive, and greenhouses can get pretty pricey. The other thing about greenhouses is for the most part they're stuck in one spot, and so I try to avoid those. So this free mini course, there's a link down below, and again, it's totally free. You just sign up for it. It does sign you up for my email list, but I only email like once or twice a week. So you can click on that down below and sign up for that free course. And that is kind of a lead-in to my master course, which the Year-Round Gardening Master Course is about a 5.5-hour course. We do a weekly study guide. I do some live Q&A sessions over a Zoom call. We have a private Facebook group that goes all along with it. And that course will be open starting on July 6th through July 16th. Okay? So I just wanted to mention that to you guys because that is available coming up soon. But again, I just felt like doing a webinar today, and so I would love to have you guys go join the free course, and you'll get a lot more information from that. But I'm not hard selling you on anything today. Okay, so let's take a look at our questions. And wow, you guys have got a lot of questions. Okay, Sam, and we sometimes we can and sometimes we can't get the names on here. But so Sam asked, can you plant potatoes in the fall? Sam, it depends on where you live. And there are some adventurous folks that will plant their potatoes in the fall and let them overwinter. You'll lose quite a few, but you will still have some that survive. You know, all of us have planted potatoes in our garden at some point and then had volunteers come up the next year from a potato that we didn't get planted, or that we didn't get dug up. And so, yes, you can plant them in the fall. I have found that they're just more successful planting them in the early spring because you have less chance of them getting nipped back by the frost or the ground freezing solid and ruining them and stuff like that. If you live in some of the warmer zones, like zones 9 and zone 10 especially, your planting time may be the fall. So you kind of have to gauge that. But for most of us that live in the colder areas, I have just found that my crops are more successful if I plant them in the spring. Okay? All right, how do you incorporate cover crops if you do spring, summer, and fall gardens and you have limited space? Okay? That's a big challenge. So I I have a fairly decent sized garden. It's not huge by any stretch, but we have 4 raised beds, plus we have an in-ground garden that is about 1,200 square feet. So a pretty decent size. And so we are able to, if we choose, to plant some cover crops in some of our beds. But really the only way to do cover crops is to not use all of your beds for fall and winter. So, you know, we don't use all of our beds for fall and winter. We only use basically about 1.5 of our, so our in-ground garden is divided into 5 24 by 4 foot beds. And we'll usually use about 1.5 of those for fall and winter. And then I'll usually use 2 of the raised beds for fall and winter as well, depending on what crops I've planted. So you just kind of have to work it out and say, okay, well, this bed really needs, you know, it really needs a cover crop this year, so I'm not going to plant, you know, I'm going to have to sacrifice some winter production because I need to improve the soil. So you just kind of have to make that choice and kind of roll through it, okay? All right, Nadine is saying she lives in Colorado. How do I figure out what zone I'm in? Okay, Nadine, great question. Look down in the description of this video. There's actually a link that will take you out to our website that will get you hooked up with the correct place for you to find your zone. In Colorado, I would imagine you're probably somewhere between zone 5 to zone 7, unless you live high. If you live high up in the mountains, then you could be colder than that. But I would imagine you're somewhere in that zone. But down in the description, there's a link that you can follow that will take you to my website and teach you a little bit more about it. And then there's a link to the USDA website that will tell you what zone you live in. Okay? Great question. How can I keep my indoor seed starts from getting dampening off and other diseases? That's Misha that asked that question. So good question. Watering from the bottom is one thing that will help. That usually keeps the surface of your plants, the surface of the soil will stay relatively dry, and so that will usually help. Another thing that you can do to help with dampening off is to put some kind of air circulation on your plants. So put a little fan, not like one of those big window fans, but just a smaller fan that blows across your plants. Now, the one danger of that is that it can cause your plants to dry out a little bit quicker than you're used to. But so you may have to watch your watering a little bit better. But keeping that air circulation and the top layer of the soil dry will help a ton with dampening off. Another thing that you might try as well is you could sterilize your soil first. So 2 ways that you can do that. You can put it in like a pan and bake it in the oven for about 20 minutes, or you could use some boiling water to dampen the soil. So either one of those should help to sterilize the soil, and that should help to bring down those chances of hardening off as well, or of dampening off as well. Okay. Letitia would like to know, if I am growing fall crops indoors hydroponically, do you think I would need to stimulate the fall temperatures, or will I be okay with just making sure the lighting is correct? Okay, so Letitia, fall crops are cool season crops, and so you are going to want your temperatures to be lower. Okay, so tomatoes and peppers and things like that are going to want indoor temperatures in the 80s, 80, 85. These cooler season crops don't like temperatures above about 75 degrees. So that would be the only real adjustment that you need to make is to bring down the temperature in your, so if Letitia, I think you've got a grow tent, and so you would want to open that up and make sure that your temperatures stay lower, because those cool season crops don't like anything. I mean, really they would prefer 65 to 70. You may not be comfortable keeping your house that 65 degrees. I don't know, it depends on where you live, but you want to bring those temperatures down indoors for those cool season crops to really do well. Okay. Okay, I had broccoli with beautiful leaves and no heads yet. The caterpillars ate the leaves, and so now I have stalks and with little leaves growing on them. Will these plants live to produce heads in the fall? Possibly. There's possibility that they'll recover. You got to do something about the caterpillars though. So best way to keep them out is to cover the plants with some type of light fabric row cover or some kind of screening or mesh or something like that that will keep the moths that actually lay the eggs that create the caterpillars off of your plants. It's possible that they may recover. So I would take it as a total experiment because there's also very possible that they're not going to make it, that they're really not going to survive. So try it, see what happens. You know, that could be a fun experiment. If you've got the space, then leave them in and see what happens. But if you don't have the space, pull them out, plant something else there, replant for the fall, and then make sure you keep those caterpillars off this time. Okay. All right. What about rapalini? I think that's how you say it. And that's actually a broccoli, like a sprouting broccoli. So it doesn't form heads, and that would be the same scenario. They're a little bit quicker to grow and mature than some of the others, but you're going to use the same concepts that we talked about. The planting dates and everything like that are going to be the same with that as it would be any other way. Okay. All right. Next question is: we had weird weather, so I started my spring planting, but my brassicas grew slowly. Can I wait until mid-July and then replant them? That would totally depend on where you live. Mid-July might be a little bit too soon to plant them outdoors. It might be too hot. If you live in a cooler place, you know, like zones 3 or 4 or even zone 5, then July might be a good time to put them out. So just use the calculation that I gave you and figure out when you should be planting those, and then kind of just go from there. Okay. Do the seedlings need to be hardened off? Yes, absolutely. In fact, you need to be a little bit more aware of hardening off in the fall than you are in the spring, because remember, if you remember doing those calculations, you're going to be planting, you know, for me, I plant my broccoli the middle of August. It's hot, okay? And it's going to get cool fairly quickly within about 30 days, and then the plants will mature right in their sweet spot where they really like it. But it's really super hot in the garden, and so I have to take extra care to make sure that I harden those plants off. Usually in the spring, I'll harden for 5 to 7 days. In the fall, I will usually harden for about 10 days, just because they need to get acclimated to those hot conditions before you put them out in the garden. Okay. Will a portable greenhouse for winter gardening work? I have a portable greenhouse plastic that you got from Amazon. Yes, it will. I like the fact that you're thinking portable, because I don't love greenhouses that stay in the same place. And some people will get offended by that, but the reason why I don't like it is because if you're actually planting in the ground and not in containers, then you have a chance of getting some real buildup issues with diseases and pest problems and stuff like that. And so usually greenhouses to me are more meant for containers and things like that. But if you've got a portable greenhouse, and the only thing that I would worry about is winter winds, so make sure that it's secured down well. But yeah, that would be great for growing winter and following winter crops. Would be perfect. Do we amend our soil after summer crops? Yes. Every time I plant, I put a good quality compost in. So when I take one crop out, I'll put in some compost and then plant again. Make sure it's good compost, that it's well composted, doesn't have a lot of really rough material left in it. But definitely you should be amending your soil every time you plant. When we're doing that. So for sure. Do I have to start the seedlings indoors under grow lights, or can I start them in the greenhouse instead? It has a giant grow light. The only worry that I would have in a greenhouse in the summertime is that it would be pretty hot in there, and that may make seed starting a little bit difficult. But if you can pull it off, then go for it. You know, it's just a matter of you need to get those seedlings going. I do mine. My seed starting operation is out of my garage, and I've got a couple of different grow lights. For seedlings, though, I just use shop lights, so you really don't need a fancy light for that. It can just be some fluorescent or LED shop lights. But you know, if you want to try it in the greenhouse, the only thing I would be worried about is that how hot, especially for those, you know, cooler season crops, how hot it would get in that greenhouse in the summertime. But that would be my only worry. Okay. Lauren asks, how do I know if I signed up for the correct class for the free course? You should get an email. In fact, there's a series of emails that you'll get. If you have any problems, just email me at rick@ourstoneyacres.com, and that I think is down in the description as well. Just email me, we'll figure it out. Okay, but it should. So you'll go to the online gardening school, you click sign up for the free course, and then you'll create a username and a password, and then that puts the free course in your profile, and then you can go watch that course. Okay. But let me know, just email me if you have any problems, and we'll definitely get it, okay? All right, Sarah asks, when should you rotate a new family into each bed if you're extending your season with another crop? For each different planting, or is it only rotated each spring? Either way is fine. The way I have my crop rotation set up, everything gets moved, you know, so my fall garden gets rotated every year too, and so it kind of just rotates through, but you're not going to have a problem. So for example, if you wanted to plant lettuce in the spring and then lettuce in the same bed in the fall with some kind of summer crop in between, that's okay. For me, that doesn't break the crop rotation rules. And then just next year, don't plant lettuce in that bed. So whichever works, you know, whatever works best for you. I don't know what your garden setup is exactly. For me, mine just happens to rotate out every 4 years. It rotates around, and so but whatever works for you. There's no problem with planting the same crop in the fall and in the spring in the one bed, as long as you don't do it again the next year. Okay. Zone 8 and 9. None of my radishes, beets came up and gave me a good stalk, but just a lot of green. Why? That probably is because it got hot. Most likely that's the reason. So it just got hot, and so the plants decided, instead of focusing on growing a root, that they would just focus on growing the greens and eventually a seed head. So you may want to consider, especially in zone 8 and 9, you might want to consider growing those a little bit earlier so that it's cooler. Radishes are definitely a cool season crop, and they should do well even with temps down, like in the 50s. You should be fine, and so maybe just plant them a little bit earlier next year. Okay. Earwigs. Maria asks, how do I deal with earwigs in zone 6B? Earwigs are the bane of my existence. I hate them. Okay, so a couple of different ways. You can use a trap system, which the way you do that is you're going to take like a can, like maybe a cottage cheese container or a tuna can, something like that, that's not super deep, and you're going to put just a 50-50 mix of soy sauce and cheap, inexpensive vegetable oil. Okay, you put those down, kind of mix them in. It's oil and water basically, so it's not going to mix really well, but you mix it together. You put that in the container, and then you bury the container in the ground up to the rim, so that just the rim is there. They're attracted by that. They fall in and they drown. Okay, that's an okay method. But I have discovered something new. There's a product out there, and it's actually organic. It's called Sluggo Plus. Now you have to be careful, because this company that makes them, they have a product called Sluggo, which is specifically for slugs and snails. Then they have Sluggo Plus, which takes care of slugs and snails, but also takes care of earwigs and sow bugs and the little roly-polies and several other plants or bugs as well. And I started using that this year because the last 2 years we've just had terrible earwigs, and just like my basil, I don't even have any basil this year because they attacked my plants and ruined them completely. So I got some of that Sluggo Plus, and started putting it around my plants, and you just sprinkle it around the ground and solve my problems. All of my plants have caught up and taken off. So again, that's called Sluggo Plus, and they sell it like at the big home improvement stores. I ended up getting mine off of Amazon, I think, because they were out of it at the local Home Depot. But you should be able to find that, okay? All right. Started my Brussels sprouts late in the spring and had good growth. Just yesterday I found a flower, but it bolted. Will it make it to the fall or winter, or should I cut the growth head? And you're located outside of Boston. Probably you're not. They're just going to bolt this time of year. You could try. I mean, just see what it does. It might hang on. Let me get a drink. It might actually hang on and make it through the summer, but I kind of doubt it. If one of the flower heads is already bolted, then it's gone to seed production mode, so you're probably better off to just move on. Okay. All right, so I'm going to put a hold on questions because we're already at 41 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and answer the ones that I still have here, and then so Amy's question will be the last question, so that we're just not here all day long. Okay. And I am, like I say, for the next 3 weeks I'm going to be doing these little workshops on different year-round gardening topics. Next week we're going to talk about growing spinach in the fall, whole webinar on that, so you'll have plenty of other chances, but I wanted to keep this to 45 minutes max, so let's see if we can get through these. Okay. Sorry. Okay. All right. If September 18th is my 6 weeks for transplants into the garden, when should I start the seeds indoors? So take another, Lauren, take another 6 to 8 weeks off of that, and that's going to put you probably in mid-July. So I would probably start your seedlings indoors about mid-July. Would be a good time for you to do that. Okay. How do I calculate my seedling starts when I don't really have a frost in your area? That's way tougher. Zone 10B. You're going to want to think about the temperatures. So all of these fall crops like cold weather, and that's winter for you. Okay. So they're going to like temperatures from 50 to 75 degrees. So think about the time of year when you have those temperatures, and then kind of count backwards. Okay. And it would be really good to take a look at some of the like your local extension agency ought to have some target dates for you. It's a little bit different for you guys that don't have frost. So that is kind of what you're going to do there. Okay. What kind of soil do you need? So I guess we're talking about containers. I would say use a good organic potting mix. So you want to use a potting mix. And there's a lot of good organic choices out there. I prefer organic over conventional just because with the conventionals they'll put some chemical fertilizers in there, which I'm not a big fan of. So just a good quality. Spend some money on it though. Don't be cheap. Don't buy the $3 bag. Buy the $8 bag because you get what you pay for with potting soils. So just a good quality organic potting mix should be fine for your containers. Okay. How do you plant fall peas? So fall peas are a little bit different. You're gonna take your same frost date and you're gonna count back about 10 weeks from your first frost date. So let's use my garden again for an example. Our first frost date is October 1st. We plant fall peas about July 15th. Okay, and then recognize that if you live in the cold, warm areas, so places like where I live that have really hot summers and really cold winters, you're just not going to get as good of a crop of peas in the fall as you will in the spring because you're starting those peas when it's so hot. But peas have to mature before frost, okay? Because the pea plant itself is frost tolerant, but the pods are not, and so you need to be harvesting those about your first frost time frame so that they don't get frozen. Okay, so you're going to count back about 10 weeks to get your peas planted, and I'm actually going to be doing some YouTube videos on that coming up in the next couple of weeks on planting fall peas. Okay, and so that looks like we answered Diane's question as well. Amy asks, I usually start my seeds in trays in clear totes outside. Can I start my fall seedlings this way? Again, the biggest issue you're going to have that time of year is heat. It's going to be so hot on those seedlings that you might want to consider moving those indoors and using some kind of a grow light. And again, you don't need to buy the $300 grow light to start seedlings, okay? $300 grow lights are fantastic for growing things indoors, but you don't need them for seedlings. All you need for seedlings is some inexpensive shop lights. So, you know, they'll be like $20 to $30, either fluorescent or an LED with a couple of bulbs, and you should be good. So that might be something to invest in because that will give you, you know, a little bit more flexibility there. That's my biggest worry, though. Okay. And last question: should I start my strawberries in the house now to get ready? And you're in South Texas. Sunseed Mark, I don't know the answer to that. I would have to look that one up. I apologize. Strawberries for us wouldn't go in, you know, if we're starting them from seeds, we wouldn't start them until January. But where you guys are, South Texas, I'm assuming you're probably zone 8 or 9. And so I feel like it's still a little bit too soon. But you better look that one up. I'm not sure that I can give you a straight answer on that, okay? All right. That, my friends, I think is all we're going to do for today. We're at 45 minutes, and wow. Thank you guys for coming. 132 viewers right now. I think that's the most I've ever had in a webinar. So thank you. Remember again that you can sign up for that free course down below. 100% free, 45-minute long course on year-round gardening. The link is the first link in the description down below. So sign up for that, and then keep an eye out. And those of you that signed up for the emails that I sent out, I'll send out some emails to you, but we're going to have webinars every week for the next 3 weeks. So we'll have one next Friday, and then the following Friday, and then the week after that we're going to do 3 during the week. Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday we're going to do 3 different of these webinars. So keep an eye out for all of that. I'll post those here. They'll be here on my YouTube channel, and I'll post those here. And then we'll also, if you want to go to our website, which is Our Stony Acres, link down below, you can sign up for our email list, and I send out notifications when we do these kind of things as well there. So all of that is down below. Okay. All right, my friends, I think that is it. We're going to call it a day. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Thank you for being here and for sticking it out all the way to the end. That's awesome. And again, I super appreciate it. Had fun. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what other topics you would like. Like I say, we're going to focus on fall and winter gardening for the next few weeks, but I would love to have any input for things that you would like to do. Oh, one other thing while I've got you, make sure you go check out the Gardening Academy. That's our membership service, our subscription service, and we're actually in the membership or the Gardening Academy. We are going to be doing year-round gardening. That will be our focus for the whole month, and so you could check that out as well. So there's a link down in the description for that as well. Okay. All right, guys. Thanks. Everybody have a